Thank you for joining me, the first content webinar of 2023 about data excellence at your service. In this webinar, I will present the ways content operations is working to improve metadata on different levels as part of the Data Excellence Initiative, and how these improvements are changing your everyday routine as well as your patrons. On the agenda, we will start with presenting the content challenge and what inspired the Data Excellence Initiative. We will continue with principles of managing metadata, and then I will proceed to present the Data Excellence Initiative with the different tracks: quality, currency, and discoverability. And we will finish today's webinar with a few things to look forward to in 2023. We will start with the content challenge, or what makes content so hard to handle. So the content challenge, as a start, is simply because there's just so much content. For example, we can look at ALMA statistics to understand the vastness of content for Ex Libris users. There are over 2,600 collections with over 1,000 portfolios. So every file of updates or deletions or additions contains a lot of data to go over and review and compare to previous updates, since we're receiving long lists of titles metadata. And even though it is automated, errors and discrepancies might raise flags and pause the automation process. ALMA CZ also hosts 103 collections with over 500 activations, totaling in 441,407 activations in institutions across the world. And next to these highly activated collections, there are also over 8,400 collections with fewer than 10 activations, meaning that ALMA CZ also represents content that is very specific and serves smaller communities. It can be regional content, non-English content that is very valued by these users, but in total, it has very little impact on the entire community. There are also over 4,050 interfaces, meaning providers that host their content on different platforms. They also maintain a variety of linking information. For example, Elsevier. They have Clinical Key, Science Direct, medical textbook platforms, and more different platforms with different linking information to host different types of content. All this content is available in over 150 languages. So the challenge is also in representing a variety of diacritic marks that sometimes have a different meaning in different languages. If we take a look at CDI, we can see a large variety of material types represented here. As we currently have over 5.14 billion records, the majority is of journal articles, followed by books and ebook records, patents, conference proceedings, book chapters, data sets, and video recordings, meaning there's a great volume of metadata to manage with many variants to maintain. The difference in content types also changes the ways in which we receive the metadata. It affects the file that this metadata arrives in: MARC, XML, KBART. It affects the frequency of updates. Material type also affects identifiers. So the content types pave the way to manage the metadata and how we can make the most out of what we receive from the providers. The policy we choose to manage the metadata results in the way the content is represented in different Ex Libris products. This impacts internal workflows for librarians and eventually what end users see and how they retrieve the content they are looking for. Which leads us to the challenge of managing the metadata. As the content types determine the ways in which we process and ingest the metadata, for all content types, the management is done by addressing the quality, currency, and discoverability, meaning the metadata needs to be as rich as possible, needs to be updated frequently with any additions, deletions, or edits, and it needs to be discoverable with normalized field and accurate linking information. The effect of these three factors for the end user are what makes the difference if they find what they need or not. It affects the linking information and if they can reach the granular than title level and how many clicks it takes them to get there. It affects the locations in which they can find the items they are looking for. If they can find the volumes of one title, and in how many languages, if they can find the item with all its available material types, and if they can easily locate the different editions that the item was published, and if they can find the most relevant and latest edition. As librarians and as end users, you would expect to see the information reflected accurately in the metadata. One bibliographic record to display all relevant links, locations, material types, and volumes, and separate records for languages and editions. Properly managing metadata challenges sparked many discussions, internal between different Ex Libris teams and external with user groups, which has resulted in the Data Excellence Initiative. What makes data excellent? The Data Excellence Initiative has three main tracks for improving data across Ex Libris knowledge bases and Discovery Index. The first track, quicker updates, meaning improving monitoring of how up-to-date the collections are and increasing the update frequency of metadata in both knowledge bases and CDI. The second track, better quality, which can be measured by evaluating the bibliographic record enrichment level based on the MARC fields that are populated. And the third track is to improve discoverability, which focused on both linking accuracy as well as decrease rights processing times in CDI, and more. We will begin with the first track, quicker updates, which is the first track for data excellence. So direct ingest makes direct impact. Being up to date means, first of all, to make updates from providers visible as quickly as possible in the knowledge bases. So once providers notify us on changes, this will be reflected in the library's environment as soon as possible, like the provider zone. And thus your patrons will have better and more accurate visibility of your holdings. Speed of updates was what led us to find the most efficient way to work with a provider's update. It is basically taking the provider zone to the next level by making their updates available within no more than 2 days through direct ingest, which is the data excellence method of managing providers' updates in ALMA. It required cleaning up the current collections, checking which collections were not automated for different reasons, clearing up duplicate collections, and that also improved the status of the knowledge bases. It takes a gradual rollout just to make sure all the collections are doing as best as they can, and then they are moved to the system of direct ingest. What motivated us is to focus on the speed of updates, and currently, data excellence at your service. We have, for direct ingest, JSTOR collections and Cambridge collections, some of over 4 million portfolios and more than 400 active collections. These collections have 1,440 activations, meaning every update of new contents, deletions, or edits will impact a large number of institutions. Next to come for direct ingest, it will significantly reduce the update cycle, meaning that instead of taking up to 3 weeks to have the updates from the providers reflected for customers, the updates will be seen in the library's knowledge base within a day or two. The next providers we plan to move to direct ingest are both eBook Central, De Gruyter, and Elsevier. This will affect almost 9 million portfolios in 2,474 collections that are activated 50,500 times across the world. By the end of 2023, we are planning to move between 60 to 70% of all portfolios in ALMA Community Zone to direct ingest, making quicker updates available for a lot more content. Other applications of moving to direct ingest. Well, first of all, we're looking into our automation processes and review how currently the collections are being automated. Some collections should not be automated as they do not receive any updates. So this bears on the mapping of the collections and how they are expected to be handled. Since moving to direct ingest reduces our response time because we no longer have buffer time to respond to errors, we're improving our ingestion process and make sure the right checkups take place. For instance, if there's an archival collection that should not be updated, if we receive an update file for this collection, this raises a flag. we contact the provider before updating the collection. We also go over the current collections to clean up any redundant duplications. And this helps in making sure that the right collections will be monitored and kept up to date. For better interface management, we address the issue of collections that belong to the providers, but are being maintained by a consortium or another provider. For example, if there are collections that come from a consortia and they represent Taylor and Francis content, it will require a different feed than Taylor and Francis's feed because the updates can have different parameters, different timings, different file structures, and so on. Also, for the move to direct ingest, we found out that some collections are duplicates and can be better represented in the knowledge bases. So the duplicates were moved, making the community zone a better representation for what we get from providers. Another part of keeping up to date is internal actions to closely monitor the collection's currency, meaning how current are the collections, when was the last update, what should be the update frequency, and so on. Having this information in one aggregated report help us monitor collections that are currently automated, but for some reason are not being updated properly. It can raise a flag for update frequency. Well, suppose a collection that should be updated weekly has not been updated in the last month. Through our advanced reporting options, we can see when was the last time a file was fetched from the server, if there was new content to add, edit, or delete, or maybe the file did not have anything new in comparison to the last file. If there is nothing new, then nothing should have been updated. Another proactive monitoring procedure is case analysis. We monitor content cases closely and evaluate any trends that may indicate a collection is not properly updated. The second track for data excellence is achieving better quality. Better quality improves every aspect of managing content. There are two approaches to improve the quality of the metadata. Either downstream, after we receive the files from the providers, we can actively look for ways to improve the metadata. Another way is to improve the metadata at the origin, where it is created. Data excellence at your service. We took different measures to improve and upgrade the metadata. First of all, enrichment of highly activated EBO collections. I will explain more on the next slide. But after targeting specific EBO collections, we managed to improve their quality score from 3.76 to 8.04. That's the average of the enrichment level for the entire collection. This is an ongoing project, and we're continuing in selecting collections and improving them based on low scores and number of activations and other parameters, such as number of affected portfolios. Another ongoing part of data excellence, track 2, is reaching out to providers. Provider relations team is growing in capacity and changing their workflows to accommodate providers' capability. Although we have established relationships with the major providers, we have a lot of smaller providers to include in our different services. These providers have different business models that sometimes cannot be easily accommodated within our current workflows. For example, having different tailor-made collections for each of their customers make it difficult for us to maintain a regular feed for updates, additions, and deletions. Also, some of the smaller providers are not accustomed to work with standardized metadata. So it takes some effort to introduce these standards and inform the providers about proper metadata structures to be best represented in our services. A one-time effort in Data Excellence Track 2 is utilizing alternative sources to enrich the metadata, such as Library of Congress print records. This took place in 2022. Using the Library of Congress print records metadata, we enriched up to 1 million electronic records. So going back to the enriched EBO collection, like I showed in the previous slide, the quality score grew significantly from an average of 3.76, which means very poor quality, that affected the usage, linking, matching, and more. After the enrichment, The average quality score of the enriched records is higher than 8, so it does make a difference. This means that sometimes details such as subjects, authors, imprints, and more were added, making the record much more discoverable and accurate. Here's an example of an enriched record through that track. Since we're dealing with so much content, we cannot address all brief level items. So the key here is to prioritize. Since brief records for ebooks are more significant for retrieval, we chose a list of ebook collections that are highly activated, meaning we singled out collections that have many number of activations. Some of the records in these collections were good enough, but others were very brief. So these were the ones we targeted. We currently reached over 67,000 records, which is a drop in the sea of content. But when you think about the fact that these are highly activated collections, then it makes sense to allocate resources to improve specifically these collections. This is an example of the collections we enriched. eBook Central, Elsevier Science Direct Books, Walter de Gruyter books, novel books, several collections of them, DOAB and Open, NCBI Bookshelf, Intech Books Free. This affects over 7,800 customers that use these collections. Although this means selectively targeting specific ebook collections, this is the most impactful way to improve the quality of the metadata. Regarding the provider feeds, it actually is a very important part of managing the metadata across all the different Xlibris services. We're dependent in the feed from the providers, not only to keep the updates working properly and reflected for end users, but also in determining how these will look in the products and what product the content is suitable for. If the provider can send us kbarts with identifiers, unique linking information, title, authors, and so on, we can use it in the knowledge base, making a pretty decent collection. Sometimes the metadata file does not have unique identifiers. Then we have a list of titles called proceedings or something like that. So we can add it to the knowledge base. But then when searching for content from that list will not provide useful results. It would be a list of titles called the same way. They have different portfolios because the linking in the file is different for each row, but sometimes not. Sometimes this is best displayed in CDI so that all available data from the provider feed can be used and displayed somewhere. Also, the material type plays an important role of what is the best way to display the level of metadata. An abstract and indexing database, it should only go to CDI. It cannot be an album. Articles, book chapters, CDI as well. So the material type in the feed, the file types that providers send, it all impacts the content is manageable in KBs or CDI. And if the metadata does not match the minimum standard, the result is sometimes subpar representations in the knowledge bases and CDI. But as I mentioned, the Data Excellence Initiative is all about finding ways to improve the metadata. So either we can make the change with the provider or we look into ways of improving it downstream. But do keep in mind that since there is a lot of content, we obviously will focus our efforts on the most impact. And last, maintaining the feed is also a critical aspect. So by using our improved internal monitoring tools I presented in Data Excellence Track 1, we can closely follow up on additions, deletions, and edits done for the different collections. We're also looking into ways of automating processes and setting up alerts to prevent any errors. And we find ourselves often being pulled in different directions, updating and adding content as soon as we get feeds, but on the other hand, waiting until we can get suitable and good enough metadata. As we constantly try to find the right balance between the two, it's not always possible. So you end up either waiting for new content to show up in your knowledge base and discovery, or wait for better metadata to improve your experience. Although Data Excellence Initiative is aiming to enhance both the quality and the currency of the content, it's not always clear what is the best way to address this challenge, and we receive feedback on both possibilities. And this challenge presents two different modes of action. It would be interesting to surface this dilemma with all of you, webinar attendees. What do you think is the best way to handle this conflict? I've put in the chat a very general short survey just to see what would you prefer. Having a thin bibliographic record as soon as it is available, or waiting until there's a good enough bibliographic record? I'd like just to put this question without any context of material needed for classes or exams. Just what is a general thumb that you would prefer for a collection of ebooks of journals your institution just purchased? And you only find a collection with brief level records to activate. Would you prefer to wait for better records or activate as it is? I've put the time period of waiting for 2 weeks just for reference. But of course, the answer will change. If the time period you need to wait will be a month, a year, or and so on. You may also add input in the other option. So please fill out the survey and we'll look at the results at the end of the presentation. Moving on to the last track of data excellence, which spans around improved discoverability. First aspect of discoverability is the linking of the content. The complexity of linking is to take the user to the best possible link as directly as possible, while taking institutional rights and setup into account. There is no one solution that fits all. Some items are available from several platforms and the appropriate rights need to be calculated to the right copy. Some items are unique to one platform and there's only one appropriate copy. And of course, as discussed in track 2 of data excellence, some metadata does not have identifiers, which make it difficult to connect the appropriate link to the right copy. Other than that, there is also the number of clicks a user needs to make it in order to reach the full text. So these are two aspects of discoverability in the linking part of data excellence. Data excellence at your service. Linking methods. The first option, linking methods that suit the collection. One part of this is changing collections from link resolver when there are no identifiers to link in record type of linking. Link resolver is great for collections with good identifiers, content that is available on several platforms, and a reliable title list. But link in record is better for collections with no identifiers and unique content such as newspapers, collections, or primary sources. To improve the linking, you can also use the unique identifier from the provider in collections that use link resolver. That way, we are using the provider ID when it is available. Provider ID is given for specific documents in the metadata for the link resolver to increase the accuracy of the linking so that the provider IDs are part of the open URL sent from CDI to the link resolver. Another way of improving discoverability is by reducing the number of clicks to reach the full text, and this is quick links. By using quick links, your users now have access directly to the full text from CDI with just one click. This is available for 33 leading providers, and we keep adding more and more providers to this list. You can also set your preferences for the link order for the link in record collections as well as quick links. That is actually making the linking flexible to better suit the content. For example, for abstract and indexing or mixed material with or without identifiers, we offer the hybrid linking, which can solve linking issues for collections that do not have the same level of metadata. And for more information on linking, please watch the links webinar given in April 2022. I added the link here for the recorded webinars. Another part of discoverability is the rights processing time reduction. Once you've activated the relevant resource in Alma, it used to take even a week before your patrons could see the items in Primo. But today, Primo processes the newly given rights, and then it is displayed in CDI within an average of 30 hours. This is actually a major technical development. Now the average time is 30 hours to process the rights, and the plan is to reduce it even more so that the average will be below 30 hours and as low as 24 hours. Other parts of data excellence to improve discoverability is to normalize subject headings, making better matches for content to the right subject. Normalizing subject headings will impact records that have variations of subject headings, so the retrieval will be more accurate. Another normalization is to add ORCID, author information, to the index. ORCID, as a freely available resource providing unique IDs for authors, can be very helpful in distinguishing the different authors based on publications. Having such a resource in CDI will help to match the published works to the relevant authors, so that search and retrieval will be more accurate. Adding secondary resource types, such as article reviews and retractions, will be a great help to evaluate the results from searches, because even retracted content has been published in peer-reviewed titles, so making the indication of which articles have been retracted gives important insight on usability and validity of the content. And last, improving the language consistency and publication date is also a project we have allocated resources to, because this has major impact on the discoverability of content. Having various feeds from many sources tend to bring inconsistencies, and addressing the language and date variables and choosing one date, one language will improve the retrieval and will increase trust and reliability of results. That will improve the retrieval of the content and make sure the right content with the right subject and the right authors will be found. So what's next for data excellence? Next, for content and data excellence, we will keep ongoing efforts to improve the quality, currency, and discoverability of the metadata. As I mentioned, several of the actions are an ongoing effort and will keep improving according to technical capabilities across Ex Libris products and providers' cooperation. As operational efficiency is a top priority, we will keep looking for ways to improve updates, make them happen faster and more accurate. Also, the content support team is increasing in capacity, and thanks to Project Flash, we can now divert our attention to recent cases and reducing the backlog. Our focused attention at the moment is to improve your experience with our analysts, and we're working hard to reduce content-related cases. We also keep improving our communication and collaboration with customers and providers. Looking at ways to improve our transparency with webinars and meetings with regional user groups and providers. One of the ways to improve our outreach is the new content mailing lists. Please join the list for any content-related messaging. I would appreciate it if you could send any content-related questions in this list. That will make it easier for the community and the content operations team to follow up on any content-related topic. So to summarize data excellence at your service, this is an ongoing project. Data excellence is something for the long term. It started in 2022, but it will keep going for the next year and more. Because we do need to keep managing the aspects of metadata as they change and shift across products. One of the strengths in data excellence is prioritizing the best way to make an impact on library processes, end user experience, and while improving Ex Libris workflows and development. Each track can be reviewed by itself, but eventually they are all interconnected by the motivation to improve the metadata we are handling. It can be choosing the appropriate venue in which it is displayed, finding suitable enrichment sources, monitoring and following up on internal processes, and reducing time for rights processing or showing updates. So let's take a look at the survey results. Just a second. Okay, so we received 24 responses. We can see that it's almost half and half. Activate as soon as possible and wait for 2 weeks to get better bib records before activating. And then there are also two other options. activate as soon as possible. But if it's textbook, we make it as an institution's own record, meaning activating it locally. This option is activating as soon as possible, but then update as soon as better content is available, as better metadata is available. So I agree, but this does represent the challenge that the content operations team is facing, because sometimes providers send us very brief level title lists that we can add into the community zone or in the other knowledge bases in 360 and SFX. But then the question is, how long do we wait until it's enriched? Or should we wait if the provider says that they can provide something better in, I don't know, 1 week, 2 weeks, 1 month? So I see that also the attendees that responded aren't, there's no one definite answer here. It's in my opinion, it's very interesting to see responses, and thank you everyone who filled out the form. And I do want to mention about upcoming webinars and activities. So diversity and inclusion by design, how technology can ensure a better world. This is taking place on April 27th, 11 a.m. EDT, and that you can register in this link once the presentation will be released. And of course, Iluna in May. Hope to see you there. I'm attending in person and looking forward to meeting with you, and Igloo in September. So thank you very much for attending. This is my email, and feel free to reach out directly to me. Let's see if we have any questions in the chat.
Actually, if you could go back to your email slide, you were showing some of the verbatims, I think, on the.
Sure.
Perfect. Okay, we have one question that's come in, and it's a good question. We have been experiencing difficulty in discoverability of and linking to EBSCO e-resources. Are there plans to improve our user experience?
Yes, EBSCO is one of the resources that we are using in CDI. I presume the question is alternative sources. We don't get regular feeds from EBSCO, so we need to have coverage for their collections through other sources that index the same or similar material. So we are, we're competitors, we're business competitors, so it's kind of hard to get some better metadata. If there are specific collections, there might be update issues or linking issues that are related to a specific collection. So if you can just send me an email with the collection name or a case number if you have, then I'll look into it and I'll make sure that nothing is wrong with the update process.
Okay, we don't have any other questions. I want to, hold on for a sec. Let's see. Former titles to journals. This is a huge problem and it gets worse. Can you comment on that?
Sorry, I didn't understand the question.
It says former titles to journals. This is a huge problem and gets worse. More of a comment?
Former, yeah, I'm sorry, I still don't get it. Former titles to journals? What?
If that person wants to clarify what their comment is, or if they have a question, that'd be great. And I do want to make a note about the Igloo 2023 conference. The call for proposals is open. There was a post on the listserv earlier today, and that call for proposals ends in a month. So if you want to submit something on a content-related topic, I think that Igloo would appreciate it. Let me see if there are any other questions, and that person hasn't responded yet, by the way. I don't see anything else right now. So another one came in. It's more of a comment. Time for a new interface. For example, Vital Source.
Yeah, Vital source is, I also saw this on the list. The reason I didn't reply it was because I'm checking it. Maybe I should have just responded that I'm checking it, but we are looking into ways of setting up this this platform. It currently does offer a different business model and feed than we can currently ingest, but we're working on reaching out to them and making some sort of finding some sort of solution to represent their content in the knowledge base in a way that can be best maintained over time with quality bibliographic records. I'm guessing that also the number of activations per purchased per title is something that needs to be considered before adding this collection, because we need to think of better ways of making these options available for the users. That makes any sense. But we are looking into it. I know that an idea exchange that is going through a massive cleanup, it got a lot of votes relatively for content requests. So we know it's an important resource, and I will prioritize this request. It's not your standard collection to handle, so it's going to take a little time, and apologies for that.
Great. Tamar, the person responded with a thank you with a smiley face, so you can take your start of your day knowing that you satisfied somebody with an answer to a question. The next question that has been posed is the repurpose comment. It says journals change name and ISSN all the time. That information is very much difficult to see in ALMA KB. I would have to add to that. Is there a chance that this is going to be upgraded or changed anytime soon, or can you address that at all?
Well, there is an initiative to make ISSN clusters, but this is like on a more international industry standard. So it's an ongoing discussion on what's the best way to manage it. It's really hard to follow up. I totally agree. It's very challenging just to know which title joined and then, you know, split into two different journals or joined again. And but it does require some sort of international standard so we can manage it properly. There is a discussion going on currently. It's taking some time. It's going a bit slow, but I hope that we'll have the next discussion for the ISSN cluster scheduled soon, and then we'll see how we can implement like a technical solution to accommodate any new standard that will emerge from these discussions.
Okay, I don't have any other questions to ask you. If you want to conclude with some comments, that'd be fantastic.
Yeah, so first of all, thank you very much for joining. The content operations team is going through a very interesting process. We're reviewing what is the best strategy for Exlibris to handle new content and to manage cases regarding content. These things take time, but thanks to the great help from the user groups, from the community zone management group and the content working group, we do get feedback from the community, and we really appreciate everyone's help on making content in Exlibris more accurate, more reliable, and more usable. So thank you, everyone.